Okay, welcome everyone along today to this meeting of the Finance and Resources Committee, now on Wednesday, the 18th of September 2024. The usual rules apply in terms of any questions you might have, if you can put indeed through the chat function, and as always, keep your microphones on mute unless you're actually speaking. We have on the top table here today Scott Walker, who's going to speak to two of the reports, clearly. Grant Lang as leader of the council and also member of this committee. Clark Kirsten. Also, we have Lisa Simpson, head of legal and governance. And at the far end, we've got Claire Mailer, who is now our Deputy Chief Executive. Well done, Claire. So, to proceed, fortunately, I thought we were going to be starting late because of scrutiny, but I'm very grateful to Councillor Stewart that committee did finish earlier, because it really was a very substantial agenda indeed, just as we had a very substantial agenda last June. Right, I just want to ask, first of all, Kirsten, if you have any apologies or substitutions, and who might be online, although I think most people are here, but on you go. Yeah.
Thanks, Convener. We have an apology from Councillor Chan with Councillor Allen substituting, an apology from Bailey Ahern with Councillor Forbes substituting. I think we have a couple of members joining online, so when I call out their name, could they please confirm they're present? Bailey.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Forbes. Okay. Try to get Councillor Forbes in. Okay, thank you. All other members are present in the chamber, Convener.
Okay, thanks. And hopefully Councillor Forbes will be able to join us in a minute. But I'm just going to proceed. Do we have any declarations of interest? Anyone? Okay, there being none, we now proceed to the minutes of the last Finance and Resources Committee on the 12th of June. Do we have agreement that these are a fair record of that meeting? Have we agreed? Okay, we now move to the minutes of the Employees Joint Consultative Committee of 18th of March. I think I'm right in saying there was another one just the other day, but obviously that hasn't come through in time. But can we, I'm not involved on this committee, certainly Councillor Rebick is, can we agree that those minutes? Great, okay. Right, we move next to the outstanding business statement. And what does seem to me here to be apposite is, two of the actions are completed, as you can see. One, two, in fact, three of the actions, and I think can be taken off. However, I think what is ongoing, and I suspect it's going to be ongoing for some time, is the position on Tayside contracts. I'm going to ask Lisa Simpson if you could give us some comment on any discussions over the summer, and it may also be the council leader might come in on this as well. Lisa?
Yeah, from the last committee, I did get in touch with the clerk to Tayside contracts to say that we wanted to have a discussion with that. He'd suggested that we put that past beyond, given that we had elections to deal with. I did catch up and have email exchange with him last week, and he is currently in the process of trying to get a date in the diary for him and the chief executive of Tayside contracts and the three legal leads across Angus, Perth and Dundee to set up a meeting. So at the moment we're just waiting to try and get a suitable date arranged to discuss that.
So it is ongoing.
Yeah, I think I'd defer to Councillor Cuthbert, who was appointed as our convener in waiting, if you want, or vice convener in waiting, who I know has done a lot of work already, working with Claire Mailer and Lisa Simpson. So I think he'd be best positioned to comment.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Grant. Dave,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Cuthbert.
Yeah, thank you, convener and vice convener, for dropping me in it. Tayside contracts has proven to be a huge task. In fact, I've been up in Dundee 3 days this month already. There is discussions ongoing about various things, including this particular issue of the 50%. My suspicion is that we would have to change the minute of agreement because it's contained within the minute of agreement. So I am addressing other questions at the same time. That's something we're talking about between the conveners. And once I've got something concrete, I'll be working with Claire and Lisa to try and make something happen, but that's work in progress.
Yeah, and just like to say thanks for the work. And there's no truth that we're sending you to Dundee often to keep you occupied down there, but we know that you'll do a good job working with officers and keep us informed, because I think all of us are on the Tayside contracts want to see it succeed, but we do want to see some changes in the way it operates. Thanks.
Yeah, just say myself, thank you, Councillor Cuthbert, and I should have tried to notify you in advance, but it is, I think, in terms of the standing business statement, it's going to be ongoing business and probably for some time, and I'm sure we might in due course get a more detailed update to committee. Before we move on to the first substantive paper, just quickly note that just to remind people, I don't think you need reminded, we are in pre-election period with the 2 by-elections coming up on Thursday of next week, and I think you know what applies. Right, I'm now going to move on to the first paper, and that is the first revenue monitoring paper for the current financial year for 24-25, and one that takes us up to the ledgers as at the end of June. And I'm going to ask Scott Walker, as Head of Finance and Business Support, I'm going to ask Scott to speak to and present the paper. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, convener, and good afternoon, councillors. This is the first revenue monitoring report for the current financial year and is based on our June ledger. Based on the monitoring undertaken to date, we're currently projecting an overspend across the council of £1.608 million, and I'll take you through the main elements shortly. I need to stress that these projections are based on just 3 months of financial data and will undoubtedly change. As has been the case in previous financial years, the committee will receive further updates as the year progresses. In section 5 of the report, we provide an update on service revenue budgets. Across all strategic leads, there's a projected overspend of £1.402 million, which represents just 0.4% of total net service expenditure. In education and learning, we're currently projecting an overspend of £873,000. There are 2 main drivers for this net position. Firstly, a projected overspend on staff costs within the primary sector, because the slippage target is not currently being achieved due to the requirement to ensure that all classes are appropriately staffed. And secondly, a projected underspend within the nursery sector due to additional staff slippage and reduced uptake on deferred places. At this time, devolved school management budgets are projected to be on track, and there is a projected £100,000 underspend on the Pupil Equity Fund. Across Children's Families and Justice, whilst the budget is on target, we are projecting an overspend on residential placements, which is currently being contained within the overall budget. In property, there is currently a net projected overspend of £686,000, which represents 1% of the property budget. This comprises projected overspends on the non-achievement of staff slippage, costs in relation to Bell Sports Centre, facilities management and catering, and these are partially offset by projected underspends on energy costs. Within customer and digital, there is currently a projected overspend of £187,000, which is mainly due to increased service charges from social housing providers. And finally, within this section, there is a projected underspend of £350,000 in finance and business support due to the accelerated delivery of approved savings. In section 6, we provide an update on our corporate budgets, which includes the Health and Social Care Partnership and the Council Tax Reduction Scheme. On the 21st of August, Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board were provided with information on a projected £8.1 million gross overspend for the current financial year. Included within this projection, £3.1 million was anticipated when the budget was set, and the IGP had approved the use of general reserves and one-off funding to set a balanced budget for 24-25. The first set of projections for this financial year are therefore indicating expenditure will now be £5 million in excess of the original plan, and the reasons for this are set out in paragraph 6.3. Appendix 3 to the report provides a high-level summary of the current year position and the mitigations identified to date. Officers from the IGB are developing a financial recovery plan and are working closely with the Council and NHS Tayside. The financial recovery plan will be presented to the IGB on the 2nd of October, and this may require them to issue amendments to existing directions or consider additional directions. Of further concern is the potential impact on future year budgets if the actions identified are accepted are not recurring. The committee will receive further updates as they become available. Demand for the Council Tax Reduction Scheme remains high, and despite the increase to the budget this year, we are projecting an overspend of £150,000. Section 7 provides an update on council tax and non-domestic rates collection levels. In-year council tax collection levels remain positive at 37.17%, which is consistent with the 5-year average, but down slightly on last year's position. Section 8 includes commentary on our ALIOs, Tayside contracts and the housing revenue account. And as is the case in the first monitoring report of each financial year, Section 9 seeks your authority to update management budgets for last year's final outturns in relation to the DSM and PEF schemes, as well as revenue grants received up to 31st of March 2024. Section 10 includes information on additional revenue support grant and other grants, and Section 11 sets out adjustments between budget headings that result in no change in the level of council spend. And in Section 12, we include update on our reserves position, where we're seeking approval for transfers in and out of several earmarked reserves. And within this section, approval is sought to transfer funding to augment the Financial Insecurity Fund in the current financial year and to deliver the Warm Welcome Fund initiative once again. On the basis that the proposals within the report are agreed, our earmarked reserves are projected to reduce to just under £30 million, and our unearmarked reserves reduced to £14.773 million, or 3.2%. Finally, Section 13 includes a section on financial risks. These include a risk around non-teaching pay awards, which have still not been agreed and which may have financial implications for both the current and future financial years. There also remains a risk around our current year funding. The revenue budget is predicated on the receipt of funding relating to employers' pension contributions for teachers and no financial penalty in relation to the recent teacher numbers census. Further updates to the committee on these funding risks will be provided as we get the information. Convener, reporting a projected overspend to the committee is always disappointing. However, I need to remind elected members that this is based on only the first quarter of financial information. The committee can also be assured that we are taking steps to address this, and the impact will be reflected in future updates. Colleagues and I are happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. And once again, very thorough, comprehensive report. Do we have any questions? Okay, I will take Councillor Cuthbert first of all, and I see he has 3 questions. Unless they're connected, we'll take the other 2 later on, and then it will be Bailey who's online. Dave.
Thank you, Convener. My first question relates to 5.20. It's the projected overspend of £240,000 on the facilities management. I'm just curious, is this the cleaning day schools that is causing this? Is this the thing that's slipping?
Yep, so this is the mismatch between a financial year and an academic year. We've taken the full financial year saving through, where we get the benefit of an academic year in the current year. So next year we'll get the full benefit.
Will that adjust itself through the year?
No, I mean, that's the latest projection. So there's a projected overspend in that area for this current financial year.
Okay, can I call on Bailey?
Thank you, convener. My question is about section 6.3, which was helpfully mentioned in the introduction about the projected overspend within health and social care of 8.1 million. Most of these bullet points there make absolute sense as to why those things might have overspent or whatnot. But one of them, unfunded inpatient beds. I wonder if we could have some explanation about what an unfunded inpatient bed is, how it occurs, and any steps that are being made to reduce those if appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, can I ask, is Jackie Pepper here? Colin, okay.
Okay, thanks. I'll try. There are, I would need to remember the exact numbers, but in PRI, in some of the beds for elderly people, we have 4 more placements being used than we are funded for in terms of the budget for patient beds for the elderly. So the beds are currently being used, but they're not budgeted for. If that explains things.
Okay, thank you.
Will that suffice? Alston, will that suffice?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, next question is from Councillor John Duff. John.
Thanks. My question relates to paragraph 521. It talks about an overspend in catering, which is due to mainly due to the increase in free school meals. My question was, how does Scottish Government compensation for free school meals work? And if we provide more, do we get more compensation in due course for this? Thank you.
I'm going to turn here first of all to Scott, but let's maybe one or two others come in. Okay, Scott.
So, Councillor Duff, we get a fixed amount towards free school meals, so therefore it doesn't take pace with inflation. So that's why an increase in the meals leads to additional cost to council, because we have to make the variable element of that cost. If that makes sense.
John.
So effectively, no matter how many meals we supply, we get a fixed amount. And if we sort of save money, we're in the good. But if we spend more, it comes from council budget.
Yeah, so we receive a fixed amount for P1s to 5. Obviously 6 and 7 is not part of that yet, but it's a fixed amount of money.
Okay, I see on screen Andy Cook is also going to add to that. Andy Cook.
I don't think Andy Cook's actually online. I'm not sure if John Beveridge can add any more if Andy's not there.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that, but again, it's pretty much what Scott Walker has said. Essentially, the more meals that you are using, the bigger the gap in terms of funding, because we get a set amount. So that's how it operates. There's no further money offered on this.
Okay. Anything further? Okay. Right. Now next is Councillor Pete Barrett. Pete.
Thanks, convener. Just want to return to the health and social care overspend and section 6. I think there's its questions, but a comment. I think it we really need either the chief officer or the chief financial officer present at this committee, given the scale of the overspend. And I think if we're going to get an update in November, then we certainly need those officers here rather than relying on the Councillor Stewart to step into the breach. My question is regarding the £800,000 from the Care at Home transformation funding that's being applied to the councils or part of the council's share of the overspend. And what was that money originally for? Does this mean that there's going to be, almost £1 million worth of transformation that isn't going to occur because it's being applied to the overspends?
Who wants to answer that?
So in terms of the £800,000, the council approved that back in February when we set the budget. It was part of the IJB's funding plans for the current year. So the money has been applied to support the Health and Social Care Partnership in 24-25 as part of their funding assumptions.
So was it just sort of temporary one-off funding to give them time to come up with a recovery plan, or was it actually to do something specific, which isn't going to be done now?
So my recollection was that it was bridging the gap to allow them to get the transformation done in the current year, so that we got the recurring benefit going forward from 25-26, which is why it was non-recurring funding we provided.
Next question is Deputy Provost Parrott. Andrew.
Thank you very much. I welcome the figure of £300,000 underspend on energy at paragraph 518. I just wonder, if you like, whether comment can be made on what is our sort of medium term or short to medium term outlook for energy prices. I know there's been much speak of domestic costs for energy going up in the near term. I suppose what I'm saying is this £300,000 something that we're going to be able to bank, or is it likely to change over the coming winter? Thanks.
Thanks. Is Stephen Crawford? John Beveridge. Okay, John.
Yeah. Hi, thank you for the question. Yeah, I think as of now, we're safe enough to use that saving. Like there's always a caveat to this, and it depends on what type of winter that we expect. But unless we get a really severe winter, then I think that money is good to use. The projections are basically we bought all our energy for this 2024-2025, and we're not expecting that to change in terms of what our pricing is for the rest of that year. So it looks good at this stage.
Thank you.
Okay. Next question is Councillor Tom McEwen. Tom.
Thank you, Convener. Appendix 8 and items 1218 all the way through to 1221 in our papers discusses the £70,000 that was agreed in the, I think it was the 23 budget for the intensive housing support, which Turning Point Scotland provide for us. I was wondering if we could have an update on the timelines for that project, because I think it didn't start for 6 months after the project, and the funding, how long the funding will last, because we're being asked to protect that spend going forward, and whether there's any update on the challenges to actually measuring outcomes from that project, because it's a very important project.
Okay, I think Elaine Ritchie.
Thanks, Councillor McEwen and Convener. The intensive support project was budget motions money that we got for 2 years. There was a slight delay because we had to procure the service, and we were successful getting Turning Point Scotland was awarded the contract. It's working really, really well, working with 22 clients who've got high complex needs that have the revolving door syndrome of homelessness. In terms of the project, it's only 2 years, but we're looking to maybe include that as part of our review of our wider housing support strategy when we come to procure that in 2025. And we're currently just doing a wee bit of work in terms of looking at the outcomes, but it's working really, really well so far. And there's a multi-agency group set up to monitor it. And we're seeing the benefits, particularly through the homeless service, in terms of a reduction in repeat homelessness.
Okay. Next question is Councillor Drysdale. Eric?
Thank you, convener. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Mr. Walker a question around slippage targets, and it may be that somebody from education can come in as well. Clearly, a significant proportion of the projected overspend in the year to date is in relation to slippage targets, and in particular in the primary sector of education. Is this something that could and should have been predicted this year, and are the slippage targets something that we ought to review for future financial years?
So I'll maybe start that, and maybe colleagues will pitch in as well. We increased the slippage target as part of the budget process last year to 5% for non-teaching and 4% for teaching staff. The figures that have been produced so far are based on, as I said, the June data. So schools weren't actually in over the summer to get up-to-date projections. That I'm anticipating that the next update in November will be much more accurate in terms of the teachers in front of classes, etc. And I don't know whether Claire Palmer or Sheena Devlin want to add to that.
I can come in on that, Scott. So there was a pressure put in last year that was rejected, and was particularly around teachers slippage. So the 5%, the service as a whole are generating the 5% for non-teaching, but it is the teacher element that is the real issue. And if you think around, we can't leave posts vacant in a school. We have to have teachers in front of classes at all times, and that's what really causes an issue about generating slippage that you can in out with a school setting. So there is a real issue around the teacher slippage element. Yes.
Yeah, so I suppose just to repeat my question, given that situation around teacher slippage targets, is that something that the council should have predicted for this year and should take account of for future years?
Scott?
So we can take account of it for future years. However, that's introducing a new pressure that we do not have. We have, on the face of it, balanced budgets for the next couple of years. So if we add in a new pressure, we need to find other reductions elsewhere to compensate for that. But we will keep it under review as this financial year progresses.
Thanks, Scott. Right, I see Councillor Cuthbert, you've got one question left. I'll come back to you in a minute. There's one or two others still to ask questions. Next is Councillor Illingworth. David?
Thank you, convener. It's about the Warm Welcome project. I see that there's really excellent qualitative data from the recipients, but can we have some actual quantitative data? So find out exactly how many people are benefiting, how many visits has been to the various projects, and ideally what would be really good would be to get postcodes. That way you could do the ACORN analysis and actually work out if this is hitting our target of the most hard up families in Perth and Kinross.
Who wants to answer that?
I can take that, convener. It's David Stolko online. So thanks for the question. We did complete an evaluation of Warm Welcome last year, which was circulated. I'm happy to resend that round because, as you say, it did also contain some of the outputs in terms of number of beneficiaries and groups, and some case studies as well. We do keep the monitoring reasonably light for groups, so it's not prohibitive because some groups are receiving only small amounts. And as you'll know, this can be anything from church halls to community centres. But I'm happy to redistribute that and look at the data that we collect for this round and that we present back next year.
David?
Yep. Well, that would be a help. Thank you.
Yeah, you may.
Yeah, I agree with you, David, and a lot of what you said there, because we can't just keep putting this money out without having data coming back over a whole range of things, and especially feedback from the people who are hosting the warm welcome, who should be responding. That's part of getting it. But I think Claire Miller, we've had a discussion about it, so Claire might want to add what we're looking at this year, because we've reduced the funding this year. But Claire might want to add to it, because we've had discussions about that.
Claire?
Yeah, certainly there have been discussions in terms of the sort of the rollout of, I'm just looking here, I'm finding some of the data here that David mentioned. So yeah, we've had an overwhelmingly positive response yet again, and I think members are aware that sort of year on year we've been asked to do the evaluation, both in terms of the qualitative, what's the kind of the impact on people that are dropping in, but also the quantitative, how many numbers of people benefit. We had quite a detailed discussion, and just in terms of the evaluation, 4,511 unique individuals engaged with the warm spaces over the course of last year, 1,837 warm home packs were distributed, and 350 volunteers were involved in delivering them, with over 33,000 attendances at the warm spaces. So overwhelmingly really positive. David's team have had quite a few asks over the course of the last few months saying, when has it been rolled out again? So in discussions recently, we're going to continue to roll it out, but year on year we've been putting in place a range of improvements, and this year we're going to really focus on the kind of the information that we get out and the signposting, so ensuring that any people that are dropping in are getting the contact and the connections with services, other organisations, other voluntary organisations for any wider support that they might need. So as part of that, David and the team will be doing a bit of a wraparound sort of training and briefing sessions with the volunteers to ensure that they're sort of able to do the wider wraparound. I think from what I can remember, and Councillor Lane might be able to confirm this, I think what we're planning to do is reduce the level of warm home packs, but step up in terms of some of the signposting. So there's good connection in, and we know that from these drop-ins to the warm spaces, the warm welcomes, that people that are using them aren't just sort of tackling social isolation, but they are also connecting into some wider service areas, increasing their income through our welfare rights teams, and tapping into a range of other sort of service provisions.
Claire, thanks. And yes, it seems it's very much about deeper engagement. Grant, do you want to?
I just want to finish it, because it is a good question, and that's what we were asking when we came, to move this funding around, is that welfare rights are fantastic at the job of getting people to signpost people to claim for what they're allowed to claim from national governments. And the idea now is to make, and we can't just sit in a room and let people come to us, because they won't do it, especially elderly people who've never claimed before. So we have to signpost from the warm spaces that we will go out and visit them when they're coming in, to ensure that they're maximising what they are entitled to get themselves. So that's what the focus of it's going to be moving forward. But it's a good question, David, and we can't just keep doing it year on year without reviewing the outcomes and ensuring that it's the best spend of our money. So,
okay, David, is that okay? All right, can I just apologise to Thomas Glenn, because he has come back to say no need for my comment now. Scott Walker addressed it, and we'll monitor over the next period, but I just did not pick him up on the chat. I also noticed Councillor Colin Stewart and has posted a note about it's upcoming quite soon, and that's the Audit and Performance Committee for the IJB, and that's going to give more in the way of information. Right, and thank you for that. Right, the next question, however, is from Councillor, I think it's Rebick. Yeah. John.
Thanks, Convener. I was actually going to ask a question about possible increased demand for warm spaces given winter fuel payment cut, but I'm actually going to ask Lisa whether I should, given Purda. I was going to ask a question about possible increased demand on the warm spaces initiative given the winter fuel payment cut, but I'm wondering whether that's competent actually, given Purda.
Lisa.
It's a valid question, but it might just open up a debate. Maybe we could save it for a couple of weeks.
The thought did occur to me since putting my cue in the box, so I'm happy to wait a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Okay, next question, Councillor Allen, and I take you slightly out of order, but there you go.
Thank you, Convener. Just with regards to the previous question about warm spaces, hot off the press, I was in Mouthall last night at the Community Council. They were delighted to receive their funding for the warm spaces this year, but they weren't too put out about the loss of the warm packs. So obviously we're going in the right direction with that. With regards to my question, I'm going to make my apology now. I'm new to this committee, so if I ask something daft, just tell me. May do. Right, let me just get that page back. Sorry. Yeah, on page 24 at 7.7, it talks about non-domestic rates. The actual collection rate to 31 July was 28.26 compared to 22.89 for the same period previously. Now, two things. One, that seems like a low collection rate if that's what it is. And two, do we know what the reasons are for the differentials? Thank you.
Definitely, Scott.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we're not unduly concerned about that at this time. The key date in terms of the non-domestic rates payment cycle is the 30th September. That's when the big payments tend to come in. It could simply be that one of the bigger non-domestic rate payers has paid early. It could actually be that the council have paid early because we are one of the biggest non-domestic rate payers. So we're not worried about that at this time. It's the 30th September afterwards is when we really we can compare apples and apples.
Thanks for the question, though. And I think what you're saying here, and like with council tax, it's probably on non-domestic rates. It's just it's too early in the year to assess and establish any kind of pattern year on year. Yeah. Right. The next, and Councillor Allen, I see you've posted. I'm still here. You certainly are. And the next question is with indeed Councillor Cuthbert. Your second or third question, because I know one was answered.
Question relates to section 7.6, and it's the table on page 24. Basically, I'm trying to get my head around the implications of the big increases in the number of residents in Band D. I see that we've gone up roughly 5,000 properties in the last 5 years. So that's roughly 7% increase. Am I right in thinking that that equates to about £7 million per annum additional council tax? And the second question is, we've presumably built in a projection going forward. Will that be affected should house building slow down? There are signs of some house builders going bust and so on. So will that have an impact?
Thanks. Scott, I think, or one of the others in the finance team.
So your arithmetic is correct. Roughly at £1,400 a Band D, 5,000 is about £7 million. The medium-term financial plan assumes under our mid-range standard 600 growth properties growth a year. The other thing I would point out, these are Band D properties. So where they are higher than Band D, so EFGH, that has a bigger impact on the number of Band D properties because a Band H is more than double the value of a Band D. But we are monitoring it and we're not seeing any signs of slowdown. There tends to be more Band E and above properties coming through, which helps maintain the number of average Band D properties, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks. Second question from Councillor Barrett. Peter?
Withdraw that, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Second question from Councillor Duff. John?
Thank you. I have a question regarding the paragraph 1311 on page 33. It goes on there about funding and funding assumptions, and one is about the funding for teacher superannuation contributions flowing directly through from the UK government through the Scottish government to ourselves. And I wondered if this has, always happened before, and we've never had any issue with that. So there's no likely to be any issue going forward, hopefully. Thank you.
I think on this, Scott, yes.
So, Councillor Duffy, if you recall, this was a risk we entered into the budget process back in March because we didn't have confirmation of this funding, and the Scottish Government have not had confirmation of the funding either because it was to be addressed in the budget through budget consequentials. We are in dialogue with COSLA. We expect a proposal to come to, it's called the Settlement and Distribution Group, which is a group that agree how funding is split. But we're more confident now than we were when I wrote this paper a couple of weeks ago, that funding will flow through to the Scottish Government, and then we're relying on it flowing through to councils.
Thanks, Scott. Any other questions? I haven't overlooked anyone. Okay, I'm going to move the report. It is the first monitoring update for the financial year 24-25. Obviously covers on the June ledger and covers the first 3 months of the financial year. As I said earlier, I think Scott's given us a very thorough and, as usual, comprehensive rundown on the situation. We are clearly projecting an overspend of just over 1.6 million, but again, it is on the first 3 months, and that figure may well change as we go forward. And it will, as always, be kept thoroughly under review. I think one must comment very much on the financial position with the Perth and Kinross Integrated Joint Board. It is of concern. It may impact on the finances of the council, and if not for the current year, then potentially for future years. I think it's important that councillors have kept updated on developments. There's obviously the financial recovery plan to the IJB on the 2nd of October, but we want to be informed exactly what happens after that. And clearly, it is a matter that will come to the next Finance and Resources Committee meeting on the 21st of November, and really is a crucial point. Councillor Laying is going to second on what I'm saying, but just to point out, we have applied back in February. We applied 500,000 of funding to the Financial Insecurity Fund to support our citizens. It's now clear that wasn't sufficient, and a lot of people in Perth and Kinross are still experiencing financial hardship due to the cost of living crisis. So what we are doing here is to apply a further 330,000 from earmarked reserves to augment the really important work that the Scottish Welfare Fund supports. And it is, it's a call on resources, but it's clear from all the evidence we have that it is needed. We're also providing a further 200,000 to roll out the Warm Welcome Fund initiative for another year, and Grant may say a bit more in a minute. But there will be a clear requirement for engagement, and that in particular with welfare rights and how we can attack in more in depth poverty. Councillors, one thing that's not been said is on our reserves, they actually show at present our target range is between 2 and 4%. They currently stand at 3.2%. I think as a council, we do have a reputation for good, sound, prudent financial management. We do have our challenges to face, without a doubt, but I really do want to thank the council's chief executive and the staff across the whole of the council for what they've done. And I think in particular our finance team. There will be further updates obviously to come throughout the course of this year. And we're soon about to enter properly the budget process as well. I move the paper.
Thanks, you're now dropping me in it, convener. But yeah, I'd like to reiterate that we as a council should be proud that in the difficult circumstances that together as a local authority, we're able to put £300,000 in the financial security fund to help people through the winter. We've also put £30,000 in as an ask from the Wealth Revs and Bens team, basically to help people with fuel payments and crisis fuel payments. So that's what the other £30,000 for. It's for coal or oil, or that for people who cannot afford to heat their homes. So aligned with that, it's over £500,000 that we're providing when we provide the warm welcome. And as Councillor Allen said, we've had a look at the benefits of the home packs, etc., and we're decided to focus on where it's the money on where it's going to have the best outcomes. I think we're able to do this because as all of us within this chamber and within the council realise that whilst we're looking to make people and self-sufficient, we've got to keep applying the plasters where necessary to help people, but we have to work together through economic development and other ways of making it more sustainable. But I'd like to thank all the finance team led by Scott Walker, that every decision we make on anything we decide to do, they're very plain on what the outcomes will be if we take wrong decisions. So I'm really glad for their advice and the fact that they brief everyone, and so we all know when we make a decision what the outcome can be if we choose a different path. So thanks for their work for keeping us in such a healthy financial position compared with a lot of other local authorities across the UK. So thanks.
Thanks, Grant. Right, we moved.
Happy to say.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you. Right, for comment, I'm going to turn first of all to Peter Barrett. Peter, Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Stuart. And endorse and wholeheartedly support the comments of both yourself and the leader of the council with regard to the investment that we're making to support people through the cost of living crisis and the impending winter. However, having had a quick scan of the report to which Councillor Stewart provided a link in the chat, it is clear that there are no quick or simple fixes to the Health and Social Care Partnership overspend due to rising demand, rapidly rising demand for care services. I am worried by the lack of detail on the Health and Social Care Partnership's recovery plan contents, and even within that report there is little to show how the overspend of in excess of £4.5 million is going to be addressed by the individual recovery plans. And going by past experience of the sorts of budget savings proposals that have been put forward from the IGP that this council has considered to be unacceptable in their impacts upon vulnerable people, I think that we have good cause to worry that the recovery plans could be particularly unpalatable and have negative effects impacting on already vulnerable groups. And may indeed prove politically unacceptable to members of this chamber, either requiring even greater use of the IGB's unallocated reserves to tackle the care side overspend, or possibly even some bailout by the council using our dwindling reserves. But I think it is vital that we have early sight of the recovery plans and the opportunity to have our say on their contents in order to best protect vulnerable members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. And as you heard me say earlier, it is a position of concern, and we do need constant updates on this, because this is a key factor with our revenue position, and we've got to know and be able to drill down on this to a greater extent. Next question is, not question, comment is Councillor Cuthbert. Dave.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I was going to take us back to my favourite subject, Tayside contracts. I thought it was part. Oh no, that's another one. No, the Tayside contracts. Having read the report, I have commented to Scott, and we are going to have a discussion about it. But I'm guardedly optimistic that the negative tone that's in there won't be happening. There has been changes already made at Tayside contracts in terms of how they're invoicing the councils. So I'm hoping that we won't see a big bill at the end of the year. It does mean that you're going to see pressure on the facility management and the catering side of things, but that's partly because the pay increase is weighted towards the lower paid workers. So it's a question of how we allocate the funding from the Scottish Government. That's something that I will talk to Scott about. But in principle, I'm guardedly optimistic. Don't hold me to it, that maybe Tayside contracts will be less of a problem going forward.
Just say I very much hope your cautious optimism is indeed borne out in due course, and it's a matter we will inevitably return to. Next question is Councillor Forbes, who is online. Angus.
Thank you, Convener. Councillor Illingworth's question regarding the warm spaces and collecting data, particularly postcode data, I think was a really good question. And the reason I think it was a really good question is because 12 months ago I asked exactly the same question, but at that time I was chastised by the leader of the council, who suggested asking for postcode data would prevent people actually taking use of the service. So I'm absolutely delighted. I want to put on record to see Councillor Lane coming around to my way of thinking. Thank you.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, I will. Yes, on you go, as council leader.
Chastise was maybe too harsh a word, and I think you should maybe withdraw that. I questioned your motives and what you said, and that's chastisement is a totally different region altogether. So if any time anybody questions you on anything, it's just chastisement. Perhaps you may wish to change the words. I questioned your whole argument.
I'm happy to withdraw the word chastisement. Of course, that's a matter of opinion, but I wouldn't want to upset Councillor Lane. But the principle still remains. I asked exactly the same question 12 months ago, and the leader of the council thought it was a bad idea. Someone else asked it today, and he thinks it's a good idea. But thank you very much.
No, exactly what you asked, Councillor Forbes, is different from data that we're asking. You specifically asked where people may have been identified, which is a totally different question than was asked today. And I agree with the question that was asked today. We've all asked for data last year, not naming people basically and making them sign in and sign up, which, although that wasn't exactly what you asked, it was identifying the people. So that's different.
I take the view that was then, this is now, and we go forward. And what we are going to do is greater engagement with those who take part in warm spaces. And I think in particular, it's the question of engagement with the welfare rights team. How can we enhance that, make it better? I think it's a question of, in particular, the number of folk who do not receive and do not take pension tax credit. And that's, I think, a major issue. I'm going to move now to Councillor Duff. John.
Thanks, Convener, and thank you, Scott Walker and his team, for the report. I think I wanted to ask a question earlier, but I'll make it in by way of a comment. I think I agree with the comments that have been made so far by yourself and by others, and Councillor Barrett. In reflecting on the issues raised in the report, there's a number of risks in the revenue budget which are listed at Appendix 9, staff slippage, financial insecurity, pay awards, Tayside contracts, and it just occurred to me that I wonder if the Health and Social Care Partnership should be added to that list. Thank you.
I actually think that's a fair comment, and yes, it is undoubtedly a risk, and that's something we will add. Okay. But we have to, I think, get more information on exactly what the position is, and that will come obviously at Finance and Resources Committee in November. Next is for comment is Councillor Rebick, and then it's Councillor McEwen. John.
Thank you, Convener. It's just a quickie really to also add my support to the principle of supporting anti-poverty, if you like, in the Financial and Security Fund and the Warm Spaces. I think it's really important. I think you make a really good point as well about engagement with communities, and I'd like to place my thanks on record to Welfare Rights and other council departments actually for working well in the communities of Perth City North. I'm sure they do other communities as well, but they certainly do in Perth City North where there's a great need, particularly but not exclusively with Lethem for All. They do work really well, and engagement is really important. I do think my last comment, I think this focus on trying to mitigate the worst effects of austerity will become increasingly difficult, but even more important than it was before. And I think this laser focus that we have in this report on addressing that is really important. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Councillor McEwen. Tom.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Rebick on his comments. I completely agree with him. I think this council needs to focus the resources we do have on supporting the most vulnerable and the most exposed within our communities, and we need to be very aware of that every time we make decisions around money we spend and how we spend that. The comment I made during questioning about the Intensive Housing Support Service, I did that deliberately as convener of the Housing Service. Obviously, this was a item that ended up in the budget due to the efforts of Councillor Peter Barrett, who brought that to us as a group and asked us to support it. We brought that forward. This service, it helps the most challenging residents that we have, people who may lose their tenancy, and in losing their tenancy become homeless. And becoming homeless, that creates a burden on us as a council and on the general fund. This team that looks after them, the Turning Point Scotland, they also interact with health services, social work services, the criminal justice service and addiction services. And only through that collaborative working in this project is it possible for these challenges to be met and these people, these tenants of ours, to be supported to maintain their tenancies and have as happy a life as we can help them have. I also asked about the measuring of this, because we do struggle with some of the issues that we do and the things that we introduce, and how do we measure the outcomes so that we can validate spend and validate continued funding of different services that we provide. And I think the discussion earlier about postcodes comes into that. I think that no matter who you are or where you are or what postcode you live in, poverty is affecting people, and it's not as easy to measure it using postcodes as people think. And that is something that has been discussed at the Poverty Task Force previously over the years, that it's not an easy thing, so measuring is difficult. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. I think the last person to make a comment now is going to be Councillor Stewart. Colin.
Thanks, Convener. I mean, the scale of the challenge faced by the Health and Social Care Partnership is not lost on me any less than or any more than any other member of the committee, but just I wanted to just flag up a couple of points that are in that report that's going to the Audit and Performance Committee on Monday of the IJB's Audit and Performance Committee on Monday of next week, just to draw out into the discourse here some key factors. So although the projected overspend at the end of 24-25 is 7.97, so basically £8 million, we were previously predicting an overspend of £3.1 million. So the variation is under 5 million rather than 8 million. We have got reserves which we can contribute towards that position, which would leave a projected overspend of 1.6 million at the end of a full financial year. But that is in the context of from the period when we set the budget to the period that we're reporting on, the end of July, the number of older people accessing direct payments increasing by 14%, the average cost of a package increasing, in addition to rate uplifts by 4%, the number of direct payments granted to support unpaid carers increasing by 27%, the number of residential and nursing placements increasing by 6%. So even within that, mental health residential placements, the average cost of a client package increasing by 15% in addition to rate uplifts from the same date. So even within that small period of time, both the volume and the value of the need that we're servicing, or that the Health and Social Care Partnership is servicing, have increased. And we're still managing to do that with those percentage increases that I was talking about there. We're still managing to do that within an overall projected overspend so far through the year of only 1.6 million. But in terms of financial recovery, just some of the actions that will be coming to the IJB or being presented to the IJB in October: vacancy control on all non-essential posts, working with services to reduce non-staff expenditure, requesting budget recovery plans from services where overspends are projected, finance officers leading an in-depth analysis and review of trends and committed expenditure, and working with partners to identify opportunities for efficiency and minimising any detrimental consequences. I would hope that that range of financial recovery actions will provide the scope to plug that £1.6 million gap out of our £250+ million budget by the end of the year. If that's hopefully to provide reassurance.
Okay, thanks, Colin. And clearly, we've got a lot more to discuss on this. And I say once again, I expressed my concerns earlier on. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to listen into your scrutiny meeting this morning because I had other things on my mind. But I think there were two papers there, but they're more historic on the IJB and HSCP, Health and Social Care Partnership. But I think that might be helpful, but it's clearly we need as up-to-date information as possible, and it's a question of constant updates. And I think there may be some briefings that we as members of this committee and other councillors will need to have. Right. I think all the comments for the moment are exhausted. Can we agree, can we note this paper, and can we also approve the recommendations in specific areas that are made in this paper? Agreed? Okay, we move on to the next paper, and that's the capital budget and also the housing investment programme. And once again, can I ask, I don't know if John Jennings is online, but in particular, can I ask Scott Walker, again, as Head of Housing and Finance, to speak to the paper. Scott.
Thank you, Convener. This report provides an update on progress with the Council's 6-year composite capital budget through to 29-30 and the housing investment programme through to 28-29, based on expenditure to the 31st of July. This update now includes financial years 28-29 and 29-30 that were approved earlier in the year, as well as other approvals since then. As with the Revenue Monitoring Report, this report has been updated to reflect the new structure of the Council. Section 5 and Appendix 1 to the report sets out the updated resources of just over £619 million that are available to support the composite capital budget through to 29-30. This is £27 million more than the position reported in April, and the reasons for this movement are included in the table at paragraph 5.3. In summary, £12 million is brought forward from last financial year, and £15 million relates to the updated monitoring, which is summarised in the table at paragraphs 5.9. Section 6 and Appendix 2 sets out the progress on the delivery of the composite capital programme by strategic lead, together with recommended adjustments to the budget. Net expenditure to the 31st of July was £41.492 million. This level of spend exceeds the position at the same time last year and underlines the progress being made on the delivery of the composite capital budget. Adjustments in the environment and infrastructure portfolio are set out in section 6.2. Amongst the adjustments is the proposal to increase the budget by £809,000 for the Comrie flood scheme to ensure that the resources are in place to ensure delivery. 80% or £647,000 of this will come from the Scottish Government, with the remaining 20% or £162,000 funded by the Council. At section 6.3, we include an update on economy, development and planning. The most significant adjustment relates to the proposal to rephase the budget for the Perth Eco Innovation Park to match the anticipated expenditure plan. Within the property services update in section 6.4, there are a number of adjustments, including proposals to accelerate expenditure on Perth High School and Bergowrie Recreation Centre to reflect the excellent progress being made on these projects. Across the wider property services capital programme, we are still assessing the impact of the recent announcements regarding Haddon construction, and any implications will be included in future updates. And finally, in relation to the composite programme, Appendix 4 to the report provides an overview of progress on the significant general fund capital projects. At section 7, we provide an update on the housing investment programme, which will incur £97 million of investment over the next 5 years. There are several adjustments set out in paragraphs 7.4 and 7.5, but the key message is that our latest monitoring indicates that over the next 5 years, we're on target to spend 99.9% of the approved housing investment programme budget. Subject to the approval of the adjustments set out within the report, the projected outturn for net expenditure on the general fund at the end of 24-25 is currently estimated at just under £172 million. By the end of July, we've incurred £41.492 million, or 24%. The projected outturn position for the housing investment programme is estimated at £27.818 million for the current year, and by the end of July, we'd incurred £7.8 million, or 28% of this projection. As members will be aware from both this current and previous reports, there are significant financial challenges in delivering the Council's capital ambitions, at a time when the Council is already on site with several major projects and borrowing costs are higher than they've been over the past decade. The Council took steps to begin to address this when it set the 24-25 final revenue budget on the 28th of February with a recurring increase. The Council also agreed to apply 1% of future Council tax revenues each and every year to support the capital budget. Over the longer term, this will not be enough, and all things being equal, the Council will have to apply additional revenue resources to support the capital budget. Colleagues and I are happy to take questions, Convener.
Scott, once again, many thanks indeed. Right, do we have any questions? And I see straight away a question from Councillor Cuthbert. Dave.
I think Keith Allen's before me, if you want to take him for. You want me to go first? Okay.
Then we'll come to Councillor Allen.
Okay, I was going to take us to parking because it's one of my favourite subjects. Section 6.4.6 basically says that the acquisition of Fuller House and Kinhall Street car park will be coming out of potential borrowing, but my understanding was it was to be funded by the car park trading account. Can you clarify that for me?
Scott.
So it is potential borrowing. The element for the Kinhall House car park will come from the car park trading account. The element for Fuller House will come from the general fund. So it's all potential borrowing.
And can you clarify for me, will the car park trading account pay for the interest on the capital borrowed against the car park, or will the full funds for the car park come from the trading account? Does that make sense? So will we be borrowing the money and then paying for that borrowing from the car park trading account?
So we'll be borrowing money from the PWLB. If we're going with the car park in isolation, we'll be borrowing money from the PWLB. We will be paying that from the money from the car park trading account.
Thank you.
Now turn to Councillor Allen. Keith.
Thank you, Convener. I think that Scott possibly alluded to this in his statement to begin with, but In section 7.5, the last bullet point talks about double dykes, chalet replacements, and there's a fair amount of money there. I understand that Haddon Construction, which recently went into administration, had the contract for this work. Can we be given an update as to how this unfortunate business closure is going to impact the council's contracts, and what kind of financial impact do we have? What risk is there? Thank you.
I'm going to ask John Beveridge here, and I think Elaine Ritchie may want to come in too. But John.
I think it's probably more for Elaine Ritchie on that particular project. I mean, in terms of what property services have with Haddon, we are working through the detail just now just to see what the impact is. Fortunately, we don't have an awful lot work with Haddon at this current time, but nonetheless, we need to come up with a plan for how we're going to take projects forward, which currently sat with Haddon Construction.
Thanks, John. Elaine?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, it does pose a bit of a challenge for us, but the challenge really comes at the end of it, because Haddon had subcontracted out the work to another contractor who's actually replacing the chalets, and that'll give us time to re-procure the work elsewhere, because they're doing external sites. So there's no financial implications because the work was subcontracted out and it's on progress. And I'm sure there was elected members briefing circulated on that, but I can reissue that if that's required. And all residents were updated. So despite there's been a wee bit of a delay, but there's no financial impact because the work was subcontracted.
Thank you. Keith, anything? Obviously, the collapse of Haddon was clearly very sad news indeed, and especially their position in West Perthshire and presence. Can I now ask for Councillor Barrett, Peter, for you to ask your question?
And thanks. I wanted to ask regarding table 6.4.2 and the difficulties with the technological upgrades programme. Can I ask, what was the particular upgrade and what is the issue with gaining access to the schools?
Okay.
I can answer that one. Thank you for the question. I think the issue is the nature of the work is really holiday dependent because you're working in an operational estate. The practical upgrades, it's throughout the school estate. So we're looking at that across every school really that has practical equipment that we need to upgrade. We're looking at that actively now, and we're just trying to embrace any opportunity that we can to work in the schools. Fortunately, we do have a really good working relationship with Education Children's Services. So I mean that is working along in the right direction. So, but that's really what it involves.
Okay, thanks, John. Peter.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to find out what the specific technological upgrades that there's difficulty in implementing or in installing.
I mean, I can come back with that detail, Councillor Barrett. I don't have that to hand just now, but I can follow up with my colleague Brian Reid on this, who's basically managing that line of work.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, John, I think we would find that helpful. Grant?
And I may be wrong, but I will say this anyway, because I think it's something to do with the changing of the screens, the large screens that go into each of the buildings and fitting them and moving around, and it's not possible to do it whilst there's pupils in the rooms. But I can't remember who was told that, but that's my understanding. Promethean boards, there we go. It's the weight of the Promethean boards. I don't know what a Promethean board is, but I knew I'd heard it, so hopefully that helps. Apparently it's a very smart whiteboard. I am feeling like I am now a puppet. Being moved to the side here.
Maybe better a puppet than a dominatrix.
I hope we're not going to get into a classical discourse about Prometheus and Bound and whatever. but I've learned something new today, clearly. Can I ask Councillor Drysdale, Eric, for your question?
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Mr Walker made reference in his report to this council's prudent decision to apply 1% of council tax specifically towards servicing capital borrowing on a recurring basis. Is Perth and Kinross a trailblazer in this respect, and is either the Director of Finance or the council leader aware of other local authorities closely looking into following in Perth and Kinross's footsteps in this regard?
Eric, thank you. And I think contrast and compare here actually would be interesting. Scott?
Unfortunately, I don't think we are trailblazers. I am aware, I think Highland did a similar thing, and I think the Chief Exec told me that a council, was it North Lanarkshire, had also done something a few years ago. So we were not first, but we're certainly doing our best to ensure the sustainability of our capital budget.
And if I may, is the council leader or yourself aware of any other local authorities looking to follow suit?
Yes, I've had inquiries of other local authorities wondering how we are moving in one direction of, as a whole council, of building new premises and building them to the standard that we are building them. And I said it was because that as a council across the chamber, we agreed to put 1% of council tax away. And that is something that hopefully whoever the next administration is moving forward can continue, so that we don't leave a massive hole for our children to fill further down the line. I think it's a sensible decision. And yes, I have been asked if Councillor Walker, if Scott Walker could write down how it actually works and feeds up to pass back to other local authorities of all political descriptions.
Okay, thanks. Before I come to Councillor Stewart, I see there's a comment in the chat from Thomas Glenn. Thomas, do you want to add to what you've said there? Don't know what's happened here. He is
You're muted.
Yeah. You need to unmute.
Can you hear me now? Sorry, there seemed to be a problem.
Yes.
Apologies, I don't know what's happened to my speaker. I was just saying that, yes, Mr Walker's correct in what he said about North Lanarkshire, and I'd only commented further to say that either myself through Solus or Scott through Directors of Finance can ask that question more generally about how other councils are looking to pick up the model.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. Right, Councillor Stewart. Colin?
Thank you, Convener. I just wanted to follow up on Councillor Cuthbert's question about the purchase of Canole Street. I'm conscious that we've got or we would be projecting to have 1.382 million in the car parking reserve by in this update paper. While I appreciate you wouldn't ever want to reduce a reserve to zero, is there not scope for, I mean, that car parking reserve always runs at $1 million, well over $1 million, but sometimes $1.5 million, $1 million, and even more. Is there not scope to use some of that rather than it sitting in a reserve permanently for the support of car parks, but to actually reduce the prudential borrowing requirement?
Scott?
So it's there to provide a safety net for the car park trading account. You may recall during COVID times, we had to top it actually up from the general fund because the income was not coming in. The council decision was to go with prudential borrowing, so that's the instruction we have from council, and that's how we will proceed.
Okay, Tom?
Okay, has the general fund been repaid by the car park trading account?
I would have to look back. I can't recall that. I mean, that was 4 or 5 years ago, but I can look into it and come back to you.
Okay, next question, and I think probably the final question. Provost McDade.
Thanks, convener, and I just want to follow up on Councillor Drysdale's point around the capital budget, and it's a question for Mr. Walker. Originally, the recommendation was going to be 1% for 3 years, and then after some discussions, we opted for the 1% forever, which I think was absolutely the right decision. Can you advise the committee how much better off capital fund is as a result of the 1% forever as opposed to 1% for 3 years? Because even the 1% for 3 years only really pushed it along the road a little bit. And my point at that point was we should be trying to resolve the problem for good.
Scott?
So I'm happy to share the detail of this, but from memory, if we'd gone for the 1% for 3 years, we had a significant financial hole opening up in 29-30 of many, many millions of pounds. The 1% in perpetuity, based on the current level of capital budget, gets us through to 60-61 when we've got a £7 million hole emerges, which grows. But the earlier we take steps to address that, the smaller adjustments we'll need to make on a recurring basis.
Right, thanks, Scott. And Xander? Yeah.
Thank you, convener. Just a very brief follow-up. How much further would we need to allocate against that if we were to make a decision in February going forward to ensure that gap doesn't appear in 2060s? Is it 0.5%, 1/4%, full percent?
So I asked my colleagues to model that, and we only go as far as 64, 65. But if we added £250,000 from 29-30, there would be no gap in 64, 65.
Okay, and I'm sure, you know, that there can be, it might be helpful to get a bit more detailed information there. Can I turn now to Councillor Drysdale? Eric, okay, you've got a further question, and I'm not forgetting this time, Councillor Allen, who will be after Eric.
Thank you, convener. I had a more general question, which is, there's been much talk earlier this month about the wisdom of incurring additional capital borrowing over and above what has already been approved by council. And I'm just wondering if the Director of Finance can explain to anybody listening in public what the impact would be of substantial additional borrowing above and beyond the existing capital budget to the council's finances.
Scott?
So to the extent that we go above the current approved capital budget, the size of the gap that emerges will get bigger, and it will get closer to, had the council not taken the steps it took back in February, we would have fallen off the edge of a cliff in 29-30. If we stick with the 1%, that buys us time to sort it out. But if you add to the size of the amount of money we're borrowing or spending, that is going to bring the gap forward and make it bigger.
Okay, I think it will be there's going to be a question from Councillor Lane from Grant, but Keith, Councillor Allen, you next.
Thank you, convener. This is a question from page 57 and 5.5. Scott, the last bullet point talks about the final amount of general capital grant in 23-24 was 1.859 million lower than budgeted. And it goes on to suggest we've got 111,000 less again the following year, 1.97 million pounds. Have we incurred that extra expenditure that's budgeted for? And if that's for free school meals, can you explain that to me, please?
Scott.
So sorry, you're the final bullet point at 5.5, yeah? So we will not have incurred that expenditure as far as I'm aware. James Salisbury should be on a call. He should be able to confirm that.
Yeah, so I can confirm, yeah, we have not incurred any expenditure. That was for the primary 6-7 expansion of free school meals.
Okay. The next question, and I see Provost McDade, Xander wants to follow up on what Councillor Drysdale was saying, but I think first of all, in order, is Grant, Councillor Lane.
Thanks. It's probably a point of clarity there because it was interesting following on from Councillor Provost McDade's question. So if we leave it at 1% just now, and then in 29-30 it was increased on current level, say £1 million per percent in council tax, we increased it from put another 0.25% in, which I think you said was 250,000, £250,000. That would then mean that there was no gap coming up in 2060 or whatever at current spend.
At current spend, there would be no gap in terms of our 35 years worth of modelling. I don't know when the gap would emerge beyond that.
Okay, thanks. And I think following on to that, so I think possibly I'm speaking for Provost McDade here, is if it was to be done sooner, i.e. in the next budget, that it was raised from 1 to 1.25, how would that claw back? What's the difference? And maybe this is something for the budget, but it's just we're on the topic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share the modelling as we go through the budget process, but in simple terms, the earlier we do it and the more you do it, so the higher level, the easier it becomes towards the end of this particular issue. So quicker and higher is a better response.
Okay, Provost McDade, Xander.
Thanks. Just looking at the annual accounts the other day, and it's a bit like our pensions grant. Although you put more in than me, I'm going to benefit more than you because I'm putting it in at a younger age. So similar sort of thing. My question actually to Mr. Walker is that given the council decision to cut the budget for PH2 by 29 million, which is a saving of about 1.276 million recurring, have we not already closed that gap that you're talking about? If it's only £250,000 gap that we need to plug in 2029, have we not already effectively closed that as is and actually have another £1 million of borrowing, £1 million of revenue to allow us for borrowing that we've saved as a result of that?
So sorry, just to be clear, we've not cut the budget. The budget of £90 million is still in place. The council approved a project at £61 million based on the early estimates. If at some point that budget is reduced, it will have a positive impact on the 60-61 position, but I'm not in a position to comment on what that would mean at this stage.
Provost McDade.
Thanks. Okay, so given it's about 5 years away, that will be roughly, say, 2029 that we're going to have a final project figure, whether it's 70 million, 61 million, 90 million. If it comes in under the 90 million that's budgeted, we potentially, as long as it comes in at least 6 million under the 90 million, we'll have closed the gap without actually having to do anything.
So all things being equal, if it comes in £6 million less, based on the current modelling, you're only pushing the gap out a year, because in 60-61, the gap is £7 million. All things being equal, that £6 million would drop off that. So you're just pushing it back a year. The key to making the capital budget sustainable is recurring adjustments to the loan charges budget. That's where you get your best bang for your buck.
I think I'm making myself clear enough there. The recurring saving from the £6 million reduction in the capital budget is about £250,000 of borrowing, which is the 250,000 you're saying we need to put into the loan charges budget to pay for the borrowing indefinitely. But if we don't spend that money, we don't actually have to put that extra money in. We've just saved it because we've reduced the size of the capital budget.
Yeah, all things being equal, we have reduced the capital budget by that, if that's what comes to fruition. But I think I'd like to share the modelling with you to go through in a bit more detail.
I'd love it on a spreadsheet. Perfect. You know, can play around with it.
Yeah, and I think the information and the detailed information and analysis hopefully will be available indeed for the budget review process, which, as I think we all know, we're about to start in earnest fairly soon. I think this will be the last question. I'm going to take a comfort break once we go through comment and such like, but is Councillor Rebick. John.
Thanks again, Convener. It is actually related to recent conversation, but my understanding is the £61 million budget, which the original officer's plan doesn't take into account Councillor Lane's amendment and his desire to see leisure water included in the project.
You are correct. The £61 million was the officer proposal in terms of the base case. That does not factor in any adjustments that may or may not come forward.
Thanks, John. Right, there being no further questions, I'm going to move the report. Yet again, Scott Walker has given us detailed commentary and overview on the capital position of this council. And I think we do continue to make good progress with delivery of the capital budget. Many of the adjustments in the paper are simply aligning resources with actual activity on the ground. I think one update, and obviously I welcome especially, is on the Comrie flood scheme. The final price was more than originally planned, but the Scottish Government have kept to their word. They have funded 80% of the increase. And I know there's going to be an open day next week. I think the actual work by Balfour Beatty will commence at the end of this month, and then the actual main bit of the work will be early next year and hopefully should be completed within 2 years. It's taking a long time, but it's coming. We're asked to hear, though, in this paper to approve a further 162,000 to the project, and that will ensure delivery of almost £41 million in total of investment in the Comrie scheme. I think we're also making good progress on a number of other projects, such as Perth High School, such as the Recreation Centre, and here we're asked to accelerate funding to match spending plans on the ground. I think the one appendix often people refer to as Appendix 4, and I think if you look at that, you'll see on the Cross-Tailink Road, the main structural elements are now effectively complete, and we're on track for an opening in spring 2025. On the Blairgowrie Recreation Centre, work's really progressing well. It looks as if that is going to open later this year, and with full completion by Easter of next year, by spring of next year. Perth High School is going to be a little bit later, but it should be open in summer 2025 and actually be the whole project completed by the summer of 2026. So I think we're seeing good progress being made in the delivery. It's of almost 620 million of investment across Perth and Kinross between now and the end of the decade. I also note that the report sets out almost 97 million of expenditure on the housing investment programme over the next 5 years. Yet again, I do want to thank officers across the council for their immense efforts to ensure delivery of this capital programme, and in particular to thank the finance team, and in particular Scott and John Jennings. I'd like to move the paper.
Thanks. Happy to second the paper. I think that a lot of the good work is done by our officers who can give us advice, and we have to make choices on the advice we have to go. I'd like to say that all these capital projects are long term, and there's people who are no longer within the chamber have been instrumental in getting these projects up and running, and previous administrations have as well. And so I think everything that Councillor Donaldson has mentioned there is down to officers and elected members of all political parties working together to bring things forward, and it just falls on timing when they actually reach fruition. A lot of the things we're talking about just now will not be this cohort of elected members that will be there to see them finished. It'll be different. So I think we should all take credit and give credit to those that came before us to get us in this position. And we all make different difficult decisions. I think that the decisions we've taken to progress these projects have been sensible, and we're now resourcing them by taking a collective decision to increase and allocate 1% of our council tax towards them. And moving forward, we have to take the advice of officers, and it comes down to us to choose how indebted we want to be and how we will finance that. And we may have differences of opinion on that, and that's all perfectly good and well. But I think overall, it's great to see some of these projects coming online. Some have been in train for quite a long time, and I think elected members across the chamber, whilst having different views on various things, should be proud of where we've got to with all these projects, and we will be moving forward with them.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Lane. Grant's just seconded the paper. Can I ask for comment? And the only person I'm seeing at the moment is Councillor Duff. John.
Thanks, convener, and it was really, I think, probably covered by the vice convener in his comments there. I think we've had a lot of commentary around about trying to afford our capital budget and the negativity surrounding that, but it's easy to forget the things that we have achieved and have come to fruition or are just about to come fruition. I think yourself, convener, mentioned Listham, Suburgowrie, Rec, the Perth High School, the Riverside Primary, Crosstay Link Road, Perth Museum, As Academy Extension. These are all things that we've done mostly in the time of a lot of the councillors within the chamber, and it's great to see them coming to fruition. So whilst there are worries for the future, it's great to see that our plans and their ambitious plans have come to pass. So thanks very much.
Thank you, John. I don't see any further comment. Councillor Rebick. John.
Apologies, convener, I was belated with that. I just want to agree with yourself as convener, the vice convener, and indeed Councillor Duff. I think whilst we've got difficult decisions to make, it is important to recognise what we've done, not just in this administration, but in the last one as well. I was lucky enough to have a visit with colleagues that are also here today to Perth High School, for example, on Friday, and I very deliberately haven't said too much about it, given that we're in Purda, but it is important to recognise that the project is amazing. It's coming along just really well, and it's really exciting. And I think it is important to recognise the positive things that we have done across the chamber here in Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Right. I'm going to ask, I just make the comment, Councillor Duff referred to negativities, and I remember myself at one point being accused of being negative on the issue of Comrie flood scheme. I'm actually rather more positive now, but I think the key thing is with the various projects, it is investment in our capital infrastructure and it's of benefit to the people of Perth and Kinross. It's also benefit to the local economy. So I think we can be proud of so many of those projects and how far we've come. I'm like the committee to agree the report and to approve any specific recommendations. Can we agree? Okay, we're going to take a break. It's 15:40. I was going to say for 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, but in fact, if you can be back by 10, yeah, I'd like to finish if possible by 5. We've got the report on transformation and change, but for 10 minutes. Okay. We move on to our next paper, and it's an important paper, Transformation and Change Programme Update. And I'm pleased to welcome to the top table at the end here, Charlene Guild. And we've also got sitting at the back of the kirk, Norman Ballantyne as well. But Charlene, can I ask you to speak to the paper and and explain to us what it's about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Convener, and good afternoon, councillors. This report provides an update on the progress of our Transformation and Change programme, which was established in June 2022 following the approval of the Council's Transformation and Change strategy. This programme has been vital in supporting our overarching vision to create a Perth and Kinross where everyone can live life well, free from poverty and inequality. The work we have undertaken in Phase 1 has been instrumental in laying the foundation for this vision. It has focused on reimagining how we deliver services through the strategic leadership review and the consolidation work streams. The programme is comprehensive and broad in its ambition, incorporating a range of key initiatives designed to achieve better outcomes, improve efficiency, work with and within our communities, and transform how we deliver our services to communities here in Perth and Kinross. Throughout Phase 1, we have made steady progress with some of the benefits realised being set out in Appendix 1. We've successfully implemented the Senior Leadership Review and streamlined various services through consolidation, while making strides in our Cultural Change programme. These efforts have not only resulted in more efficient services with a renewed focus, but have also created savings that align with our long-term financial goals. For example, the senior leadership. Is that better? Okay. So we've successfully implemented the Senior Leadership Review and streamlined various services through consolidation while making strides in our Cultural Change programme. These efforts have not only resulted in more efficient services with a renewed focus, but have also created savings that align with our long-term financial goals. For example, the Senior Leadership Review alone has led to an annual saving of £789,000, with cumulative savings of over £2 million projected by 26-27. This is complemented by further savings from consolidation and redesign work streams across key areas like finance, human resources and property, amounting to over £2 million in total over a 3-year period. However, it is important to note that the Transformation and Change programme is not just about cost saving. It's about positioning the Council to be more responsive, more agile and more collaborative with our communities. The cultural change work has been vital in this respect, engaging 80% of our staff in workshops that have reinforced our values and vision, fostering a culture of respect, collaboration and accountability. As we move into Phase 2, we will continue to build on the strong foundation we have established, enhancing our approach through a structured programme management office with a series of elected member sessions, which will keep councillors informed on specific work streams and ongoing processes. This will ensure that our efforts remain aligned with corporate priorities and that we maximise the impact of every project. We've achieved substantial progress across the programme in Phase 1, but there is more to do. The next phase will focus on deepening the changes already underway, engaging with our communities and ensuring we continue to deliver on our commitment to a better, fairer future for all in Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Charlene, thank you very much. Can I just ask, first of all, before I ask for questions, is Caroline Shares, Caroline, are you able to hear us now?
I can hear you, thank you.
Yeah, you're fully in the meeting. That's great, thanks. Right, do we have any questions? First of all, maybe surprised, Councillor Keith Allen. Keith. And then Tom McEwen.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Charlene, for the report. I'm looking at 511 on page 92, and it's the response rate to the employee opinion survey. It's got some pretty good statistics in there, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't tell us how those relate to previous scores. And I just wonder, were there any particular scores that are not on there that were perhaps low and could have been better? Thank you.
So in terms of previous scores, the last staff survey that we carried out was in 2022. These were temperature checks at that point. They were kind of a rollover from the COVID years, as it were, and we didn't ask the same questions. This was much more in depth. The last survey before that was 2018, so unfortunately the comparator probably wouldn't be there. In terms of this survey, I know that we had something like 20% additional staff responding to it, and it was largely quite positive in terms of the respondents. I don't have the information to hand in terms of whether or not there were areas for improvement, which I'm sure there will be, there always is, but we could certainly distribute that information. I think it went out as an elected member briefing in more depth.
Keith, anything further?
Thank you for that, Charlie. Listen, is there anything that we can do to increase the participation, to encourage more people to get involved? 47, that's not even half our staff.
Yeah, and I appreciate that probably does sound quite low. It was a huge improvement on the 27% that we had in 2022. However, I know that my colleagues within People and Culture will be working on this, and continued engagement around about the employee experience phase 2, cultural change phase 2 will tackle some of the engagement statistics that you're seeing there. There might actually, I don't know if Claire, you want to.
Yeah, I think Claire Miller, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, and as Charlene has said, that it's a significant improvement in terms of response rates compared to the previous survey. Feedback that we had from staff previously was they were just feeling a little bit, where was the feedback loop? Where was the you said we did? So therefore, there was a reluctance for them to fill the survey out because they didn't feel that they were necessarily getting any kind of feedback. So you'll see within the briefing, and I think within some of the information, the briefing that came out to all elected members, we've done a range of engagement sessions with managers across the organisation. All teams are pulling together an improvement action plan based on the staff survey to really sort of give that sort of demonstration that we are listening, we're acting together. I was actually in a workshop here with the HR and OD team a few weeks ago, and they were going through their areas of the staff survey to say, right, what are our areas for improvement? So very much engaging staff across the organisation. The other thing that we've done is we've done quite a lot of analysis. If you pull the briefing out, you'll see there's very detailed information. You can do the drill down at a team level within a Power BI tool. So there's a link there within the elected member briefing that went out. And there are some areas where we know engagement hasn't been as high as others. So I'm looking at Nigel at the back there. Within our operations team, for the very reason they're out and about, they're in the vans, and we've always sort of struggled. So we've done a wee bit of kind of different work with them in terms of engaging and getting feedback on a more sort of one-to-one, face-to-face basis. So teams are working across the organisation to ensure that greater level of engagement.
Thank you, Claire.
Can I come back just one more time?
Yeah, on you go.
Thank you. The reason for my question was more supportive rather than in the other direction. And the reason for that is, after the malaise of COVID and all the problems that we had, every industry was talking about low morale and motivation in their organisation. You've got some great results there. So let's get that employee opinion survey, get more people involved in, and let's put some of those rumours to bed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Keith. Right, the Councillor McKeown, Tom.
Thank you very much, Convener, and thank you, Charlene. My question is quite simple. I suppose the preamble to it is that, you know, during COVID, we hugely increased our use of IT and interaction in teams, and even across our services that we have, criminal justice service, etc., have worked completely differently now since COVID, using interactive tools and working better that way. We have, as a council, My PKC, in which our residents can engage with the council, reporting different incidents and different problems that they have. So the question is, when are we going to get a council app? Because our residents don't sit at computers all day, they sit on their mobile phones, and mobile phones work off of apps. Apps don't need passwords, they need fingerprints, they need different things. It's easier to use, it's easier to interact. It has GPS location if you're reporting a problem. There are so many advantages to using an app for our residents to engage with the council at the council at multiple levels and different departments all at the same time. So are we going to do that?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. I'm not sure if we have an IT colleague on the committee this afternoon. What I can say is that Alan Taylor, our strategic lead for IT and digital, has quite a comprehensive digital transformation strategy, which takes in business systems. It's looking at how we better use AI as well. So there's a number of different work streams going on in our IT area. And one of the first elected member briefing sessions that we're hoping to do around the theme will be on the digital programme. So we're hoping that will be at the start of November, and that Alan will come along and give elected members a much more sort of specific update around about his area, and perhaps at that point we can pick up on the council app.
Thanks, Convener. My question is in relation to paragraph 5.4, I think it's on page 90, where it talks about the introduction of theme boards linked to corporate plan priorities. I wonder if I could get a bit more explanations to how these theme boards fit into the council structure, if you like, how they would work, and how we might achieve cross-theme working in that process. Thank you.
Once again, Charlene or Norman.
I think I'm going to pass this one over to Claire around about themed boards, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the question, Councillor Duff. And I think we've possibly talked about this before, either at leaders or indeed in previous sort of meetings. When the strategic leads, through the strategic leadership review, when the strategic leads were appointed into post, to ensure that kind of more one council approach and a greater focus on organisational outcomes rather than the service specific outcomes, strategic leads were each sort of identified as a key lead for each of the corporate priorities. And so to strengthen that and to do exactly what you said, to ensure that kind of cross-service working, the theme boards have been or are in the process of being established across the organisation. So for example, and I don't think Greg is on the call anymore, but Greg Boland, as the lead for poverty, had the first of his poverty boards last Thursday morning, and that is bringing together all of the key lead officers across the council round and about poverty. So, you know, we had education there, looking at PEF funding, the educational attainment gap. We had Elaine there round and about housing, housing support, but also sort of affordable housing, sort of rents and the delivery of affordable housing, and so on, welfare rights colleagues. So these have been established across the organisation to ensure that real kind of collaborative approach and that far greater focus on the delivery of our corporate outcomes, very much linked to the annual performance report and our CDIP.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Right, we have a question from Councillor Stewart. Colin.
Thanks. I've got two, but they're on different subjects, so I'll come back into the chat. I think this is very welcome paper, so thank you very much for that. And there's lots of good stuff in it in particular. And love some of the bullet points in section 6.6 about defining the problem before defining the solution, and seeking citizen participation, and lots of stuff in there. Sounds really good to me. What I wanted to know was in terms of transforming the employee experience and making the council work smarter, not just harder, what sort of techniques might we bring to streamlining the jobs that our staff do to make them easier, more less more mistake proof, more coherent. In the private sector, there are lots of techniques that are available to do that, from investing, lean management, that sort of thing. Do we want to actually bring any of that into the way that the council operates and smooth the job flows and processes that our employees have to go through?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. It's a large question in that, so there's I suppose two things that came up for me there. One was around the methods and tools that we use. So you're right in that we are taking a service design approach to transformation programme as a whole, and we do have experts in the lean methodology within the organisation as well. So we will be applying those principles and methods to transformation projects while we're supporting people through. In terms of individual job roles or how we take job roles forward and make them more efficient, I think you said, Claire, that Greg isn't on the call at the moment. I'm not sure if Pauline is, in terms of people and culture and actually how we focus down on that. And I think that might be a workforce strategy question.
Just to come back in quickly, it's maybe less about a workforce strategy, but about actually simplifying the processes that people have to do. So cutting the number of stages that there are in, cutting the number of fields on a form, cutting the number of stages in a process to get from somebody returning their keys to the next time the property is rented out, whatever it might be, but streamlining all of that sort of.
That's helpful clarification, thank you. So yeah, we will be looking at that. So we are doing some journey mapping through the service design process. We have a workshop tomorrow to look at one of our kind of project reviews that we are carrying out, and we'll start to look at processes as well, and look at the stages within those processes, how we can make them leaner, how we can cut out things that are extraneous and perhaps not required any longer. And I think one of the overarching messages that we're giving from the Programme Management Office is that actually our processes aren't set in stone. They are created by people, and actually if people aren't following them, then perhaps we need to ask ourselves, how can we make efficiencies or improve that process? So that is a message that is coming out quite loud and clear from our Programme Management Office.
Okay. Next, and I think there's two more questions I can see to go. Councillor Cuthbert, Dave.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I thought I'd bring us back to parking. I've noticed on pages 101 to 104, there's a number of projects listed. I remain concerned about the provision of parking in the city centre, and basically moving people from where they are currently parking, both in Dewar Street, Dewar Centre and Glover Street, and also in Thimble Row, into other car parking spaces. I'm aware that Active Travel is going to be looking at the provision and the availability of spaces and so on, but I see it as a significant problem in terms of you need the footfall in the city centre, and therefore you need people to be able to get to it. So I'm just wondering whether we would consider having an actual transformation and change programme looking at car parking to see how we move forward in terms of the parking that we've got.
Charlene, answer that, but I think we've got to take it in terms of the decisions we took on 4th of September, and I think it comes within a broader and overall context. But Charlie?
I'm going to let Claire kind of answer the specifics of that. What I would say is I think we've committed to being quite agile and flexible in our approach to transformation and change. We don't want to labour any work streams if they're not working, and conversely, if there are things that we need to look at and add to phase 2 programme, then we will do that. I'm just going to pass over to you, Claire, for more specifics.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things here. Certainly, you know, Charlene's point about the programme being sort of agile and sort of we need to sort of flex and sort of follow the evidence. And I think the other point as well is, you know, some of the discussion in terms of the answer to the last question, service improvement happens on an ongoing basis. It's everybody's responsibility, all managers and leaders across the council, and very often it's just happening. So sort of, you know, improving our processes, our systems, the way we work is happening, you know, every day across the organisation, and we could probably give, you know, numerous examples of those. In terms of the parking specifically, and you know the commitment that was given through the mobility strategy, the parking survey and the parking review will be undertaken. And there is also some activity that's underway in terms of just monitoring car parking more generally, and I think the discussion that we had, the team will be fitting sensors to the car parks. That will just fit into the wider range of service improvement. I've got Elaine Ritchie nodding her head at the back there. If they were identified that there was a particular issue and it sat within another project, then we may consider bringing it into the wider programme. But that isn't to say this work is underway. We're looking at a parking review as it fits within the mobility strategy, and indeed as it feeds into any of our other strategic outcomes. So just to give you that assurance, and we will keep elected members updated in terms of progress through a range of either elected member briefings or indeed engagement sessions. I think through the parking review, we did have a commitment to do wider public engagement and indeed elected member engagement. Yeah, I've got Elaine's nodding her head at the back, so.
Okay, now hold a minute. Before I come to Councillors Barrett and Councillor Stewart for his second question, I think the council leader wants to make a comment, observation.
I think there was a commitment to monitor parking, and in the debate 2 weeks ago, part of the motion, it was accepted that we would monitor parking moving forward, and as the projects, Thimble Row, etc., progressed, it would be a continuous movement of monitoring and reporting back. And if there were, if the data proved that there was a problem with the lack of parking, that it would be addressed. I'm sure that commitment was given by officers in the debate.
Yeah, I'm fully accepting that. I'm not challenging the decision that was made last week or the 4th of September. What I'm really saying is that I perceive there might be a problem. It's really a question of how do we move people from where they're parking now to where we've now got the parking, if you like. And I see that as something, you know, more signage, more leaflets maybe for people to show where the parking is, so that we're not pushing people away from the city centre. That's the sort of thing I was looking at.
Yeah. So the parking review and the parking survey and the data that's been collected, that will give us that baseline data and that valuation. And as the council leader said, you know, as at a service level, that's that kind of baseline evaluation in terms of what the kind of current and indeed future needs are. And then obviously we will respond to that as required. So I don't think at this stage there's any need to sort of pull it into a wider review, but there is that commitment for that wider engagement because it sits within the work of the mobility strategy.
Okay, Thomas Glenn wants to make a comment. Thomas.
Thank you, convener. Can I just check that you can hear me?
Yes, didn't hear you.
Sorry, I'm having a problem with my headphones today. Apologies for that. No, it was just to reaffirm what Claire has already said. The issues that Councillor Cuthbert is raising are for the mobility strategy and looking at our city planning and land use. So I don't see this being a transformation project. I do see this as being an issue that we'll continue to take forward, as Claire's already mentioned, through the mobility strategy, and officers have already made that commitment.
I'm now going, thanks Thomas. I'm now going to move on to, and I think it is important, and there's a whole variety, there's a whole multiplicity of transformation projects here. I'll come to maybe in a second, but can I ask Councillor Barrett? Peter, you've got a question.
I think it just follows on from that point that you made, convener. There are, I think 22 projects in Appendix 2, and there's 19 in the list in paragraph 6.10, and they don't all match up. So we'll have something in excess of 22 transformation and change projects, or in the next phase. So how are we prioritising these, and are elected members going to be given some indication of what the time span for these projects are? Because I can't imagine they're all going to fit. It's not going to fit into the next calendar year.
Thanks. Yeah, and Charlene. Yeah, good question.
And thank you for your question, Councillor Barrett. Yes, we are kind of well aware that there are a lot of projects within the phase 2 list, and that we will be making sure that they are prioritised. This will be a sort of 3-year ongoing plan in terms of phase 2. Norman, I'm just wondering if there's anything you would like to add from a Programme Management Office approach.
Not really, no, Charlene. I think it's important to emphasise, as you mentioned before, about the need to be agile, the need to look at what we're doing, what we're delivering. But no, I think what you've outlined there is my opinion as well.
I think we're also aware that some of these projects will perhaps extend further than the 3 years that we've set out for phase 2. So again, some are more long term, some are shorter term, some will be more complex than others, and we'll be sure within our project monitoring to have that mapped out in terms of key milestones and deliverables.
Okay, thanks, Charlene. Right, now there's a question. Oh, no, I'm going to take a question from Councillor Lane, because it says first question. Grant.
Just to say, would it be reasonable to accept that many of these projects, although I think it was 22, Councillor Barrett said, are all interlinked? So part of the work you're doing in one is linked to another one, so it's not 22 individual transformation projects. Would that be correct in that assumption?
Charlie?
I think that's a correct assumption to make, in that there are a number of interdependencies between the Transformation and Change wider programme, and we have oversight of them through the Programme Management Office approach. The other thing I would say is there's a number of redesign projects within that list in phase 2 as well that will actually fall under the banner of the Leadership Development Programme phase 2. So while it looks like there's 22, they will be consolidated into smaller projects and work streams as we go.
Okay, thanks. Right, second question from Councillor Stewart. Colin?
Thanks, convener. It was in relation to in Appendix 2, the third project listed there is on multidisciplinary locality working. That's about teams working together in localities to deliver for a geographical, roughly community or area. What I was wondering about was multidisciplinary staff. Where individual staff could perform multiple roles, so that the coverage of, you don't need 6 people in a locality to do 6 different jobs if 3 of them are double trained, or 2 of them are trained to do 3 jobs, or 1 is indeed trained to do 6.
Charlene?
I think Claire's going to answer that, if that's all right.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I think this is really interesting and I really like this question, and I think this sort of, challenge for us as teams. I think we've got some really good examples, probably, if we're being honest, initiated through COVID, whereby we had officers picking up colleagues' roles or visits or assessments to avoid multiple visits to individual households. That was a much more efficient way of working, and also in terms of that kind of single point of contact for the household worked really, really well. I think we've got a number of examples where we are pulling together different roles, looking at how we can be much more efficient. I think your question earlier on about efficient processes, but how do we also have kind of multidisciplinary people and roles? I know certainly, through the consolidation reviews within, I'm looking at Elaine, I'm using Elaine as a reference point because she's sitting here and I've got some good examples within Elaine's area. But what we did in terms of pulling together housing and communities and the different communities role, and really looking at some of the areas of work, particularly in our rural areas where, through the Rangers service, we've got Rangers that are out there, we've got, I can see a number of you nodding your head because this probably comes back to some discussions we had through a budget process a couple of years ago. So I think you'll be pleased to know that this is progressing. Rangers, parking attendants, Safer Communities team out there, free, out within a locality. What does that take in terms of time, travel, and indeed customer experience? So that is one area that Elaine, certainly she's been along to her executive leadership team, has pulled together a proposal, and that is an area that we are certainly looking at. So we've got a number of examples across the organisation, and as the strategic leads are now in post, they're now looking at their areas of service delivery and opportunities for more integrated working, but also examples such as that. So I think, fair question and fair challenge to all of us that I think we will sort of continue to, consider as we go forward. But that's just, I think, one example.
On.
Thanks, convener. As long as you're going to continue to consider it and come back to us, then I'll continue to ask the question. I think it's important that, this was brought. It's been something that we've suggested pre-COVID, rather than being forced into doing something by necessity in a COVID situation. It'd be great to take the opportunity of that model, which works in sort of a number of small areas, but to try and broaden that throughout the organisation as a means that I think as well of transfer, in terms of what you're talking about in the paper, transforming both the customer experience, the residents and their journey through the council processes, but also our staffs and their breadth of experience.
Absolutely, and I think just as a quick follow-up, I think we are having to do this, out of necessity. You can see the difficult financial challenges that we're facing, and I think in terms of that real customer focus, in terms of that kind of single point of contact and that kind of more rounded service delivery, but also in terms of the delivery of efficiencies. So yeah, we've got another couple of examples that are coming to mind as we're speaking, but I think it would be good for us to do one of the elected member briefing sessions on some of this work that we're progressing.
Okay, thanks, Claire. And I must say the example. Thomas Glenn, Thomas.
Thank you,
Can you hear me?
convener. Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up Councillor Stewart's question because, again, as Claire says, I think it's a really important question for us. But it's a question that's going to require support from all stakeholders, and particularly our colleagues in the trade unions. We know the challenges that we are facing financially across the organisation. If we're going to make ourselves as flexible and as responsive an organisation as we absolutely intend to be, then that will require us to look at some of our existing working practices. And for us to do that will require engagement with our trade unions and a reflection by our trade union colleagues that some of this may require some changes in practice over time. That's the only way that we're going to be able to protect public sector jobs and to deliver on the financial efficiencies as well as deliver for local communities. I thought it was important to make that point just now, and we will have that conversation with trade union colleagues.
Thank you, Thomas, and I think it's a very apposite and relevant point. Second question now from Councillor Duff, John, and then it will be again Councillor Allen.
Thanks, convener. I think hopefully a fairly quick response to this one. In paragraph 613, it talks about the Health and Social Care Partnership undertaking their own transformation and change programme, and that's very welcome given the comments we had in the last paper. I just wanted an assurance that Health and Social Care Partnership staff would be able to participate in the sort of workshops and training opportunities which our transformation and change programme would offer, and possibly vice versa.
To avoid, obviously, duplication of effort. Yeah, no, I get. Charlene?
Again, thank you for your question. Yeah, I would just like to assure members that we are working in partnership with our Health and Social Care Partnership colleagues on this. So I had a very brief meeting yesterday with the manager who has responsibility for transformation and change. I've also met with their learning and development team leader around about opportunities for service design approaches, for workshops. We are looking at joint ways of working and sharing that burden.
Thank you. And the, I think, final question is Councillor Allen again. Kate.
Thank you, convener. At section 6, phase 2 proposals, at 6.1 it talks about a temporary team, and at 6.2 it talks about a refresh and a new PMO. Does that include a new team? Is it new staff? Can you just share that with us, please?
Yeah.
Yes, certainly. So it is a kind of re-established approach. We have a new team in place. They are existing members of staff who have been reallocated to our team. They're not new members of staff, so they all have experience of working within the organisation, project management and different tools and methodologies. So I think we've already introduced Norman, who is our service manager, and we also have Kevin, who is our project officer, and he will be supporting our senior responsible owners and project teams to take forward transformation projects. So there's a bit of support out there for people going through project approach and methodology.
Okay, I see no further questions. I'm going to move to the report. I'm very grateful to everyone who's been involved to date in the transformation and change programme, and what we've seen is continued and pretty comprehensive updates on progress. I think it's clear from what we've heard today that this programme is having a positive impact on how Perth and Kinross Council delivers its services, and I think more importantly also on how it engages with and how it supports our communities. I think the completion of phase 1 does mark a significant milestone since 2022, particularly the success of the senior leadership review and the various also consolidation work streams that have already brought greater efficiency and also cohesion to our operations. Make no doubt the financial savings do matter. They are important, but what is in some ways on medium to long term much more important than just cost cutting. It's about how we build and create and mould and shape a modern, inclusive and responsive council that works for everyone and for all our citizens. The ongoing cultural change within the organisation is also something we should take pride in, and its effects not to be underestimated. We've seen the figures on staff responses, and over 90% feeling empowered, and our values are reflected in their everyday work. However, I do take the point, Councillor Allen makes, that we need to be able to push up further our response rate going forward, and what are the means which we can ensure that we can engage with staff, and also is absolutely crucial in responses that there is anonymity. that people don't feel they've got to follow almost a line. We want exactly what they think, exactly what they feel. And I think we've done that so far, but we've got to ensure that's the case going forward. What we've also got to do is maintain momentum. The plans for the Programme Management Office, the adoption of a service design approach, I think are both crucial steps in ensuring we remain focused on delivering the outcomes our communities need, while still being adaptable to future challenges. I think our phase 2 projects are ambitious. There's certain of them that there is scoping currently being developed, and there's further to go. I think in particular, and I'm going to be fascinated to see, is the project on artificial intelligence, because I think what we've seen on that front, the rapidity, the intensity of change over the last 3 to 4 years really does matter, and it's something we've got to accommodate and adapt to, and it'll be crucial. And I take just, it's not what Councillor McEwen was saying about the need for an app, how councillors can communicate with their constituents. I think that's a good point. I think it's important, the importance of a partnership working. We mentioned the Health and Social Care Partnership in the wider community, and they're key to the success of our next steps. But it's also, we involve our community, our fellow citizens, in actual service design, ensuring that their voices are heard and that services are shaped around their needs, not what we think should be imposed upon them. I think I've a lot of confidence this programme will continue to bring positive change. I think there's also going to be a whole lot more briefings, Wednesday, on Mondays, on whenever elected member sessions, but we need to dig around the various individual work streams and also how these connect with one another. We need to ask questions. We want to know more about progress. But for the moment, I think our focus remains on delivering a Perth and Kinross where everyone can live life well. And I'm pleased about today's discussion. I think we are on the right track, but we've got to go forward with determination, with optimism, and to change this council and to transform it. So I think that's sufficient. I'm going to move the report. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second this paper. I'd like to thank the officers for the work they've done so far, and that's only the start of a lot more work that they have to do as a local authority. I don't think past local authorities we've been agile or transformed enough. Transformation and the projects that have been in the first part of transformation, that's not the end of it. It's like painting the Forth Road Bridge used to say. You have to go back and refresh that again and again and again. That isn't set out now for 20 years. In 2 years' time, something different could be more important. I think what Councillor Cuthbert said, I'm not going to park in the issue and that, but we should be able to look to change what the transformation projects are, because things change. If this is 2 years, in a year's time, you don't know what will happen from outside or with inside the council, where the pressures will be, and they'll have to be added in. So it's a living document. It's a document that will never finish. I see that, the transformation is a 2-year sort of position. Transformation has to be ongoing forever within the council. We cannot stop it. So I think it's very important work. And if you look at Appendix 1 and Appendix 2, they're setting out things that the officers and ourselves have asked them to look at. And I'm looking forward for regular updates on this, because the 2 papers that we've seen previous to this, spelling the difficulties we have and the problem, how we're going to finance things, can only be remedied moving forward if we are transformational. That they're all interlinked. So thanks very much for the paper. Look forward to regular updates, and good luck to you. Happy to second.
Thank you very much. And I've listened with interest to all of the questions, but I want to make a comment, particularly relating to the public transport item there. I'm delighted to see this item included under our transformation programme. And the first thing I would say is that I think that there are huge links between the public transport item and the decarbonisation item, since transport emissions are a huge part of our problem there. I note or I see that the picture of the bus, and I hope that that is just illustrative, because of course to me it's the linkages between all of our modes of transport that are vital. The linkages between bus and active travel, the linkages between bus and use of the private car, the linkages between bus and rail, and all of the other, if you like, network of linkages that you could get there. So I hope that the approach in this area is as holistic as possible. And beyond that, I know that there is good work going on within the local authority. I know there's good work going on within the Regional Transport Partnership. Transport is all about connectivity. A lot of our connectivity is cross-border. And I hope that looking at our public transport models, we can hopefully look at the economies of scale and the efficiencies there may be in collaborating with our neighbours, and regionally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew, and I think you make a number of quite cogent points there. Right, I don't see anyone else who wishes to comment. We're obviously going to return to the whole matter of transformation and change numerous times over the next few years. It is indeed an ongoing process, but it's one I think we ought to feel optimistic about. I think some projects will tend to be more successful than others. That's the way of things. But let's maintain that momentum and let's keep going forward. So can we both agree the report and approve the recommendations? Thank you. Right, I'm now going to hand over the next paper on minibuses to Councillor Lang, and this is a matter he has shown and really taken a strong lead on. So I hand over to Grant. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, convener, and I'll just move to Nigel Taylor. Mr. Taylor, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you very much. So this paper advocates for the transfer of council minibuses which have reached their fleet's replacement time, and if deemed in roadworthy condition, to community groups who have expressed an interest in acquiring transport for community benefit. The report builds on the passage of this proposal through this committee on the 12th of June and through SEAG on the 3rd of September, and firms up on proposals for how a community group would apply for a minibus and the practicalities of how this would achieve. The report considers the issue, and accordingly Appendix 1 is a revised minibus disposal policy. Appendices 2, 3 and 4 contain inquiry information, an application form and a scoring matrix for community groups. And finally, Appendix 5 is a list of those buses due to come off this financial year. This is an innovative proposal, and it's mooted that the arrangements be enacted on a trial basis. I'm here today with Pat Taggart, our fleet manager, and I think we've got David Stoker, the community service manager, also available and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks for that introduction. With the time, it was brief but to the point and welcome, so thank you for that. So I'm going to open up to questions from the chamber, and they are coming in now. So the first comment is, am I meant to miss out Keith Allen or ask him? No, Councillor Allen.
Miss him out. He'll not be the first one. Yeah, It's all very good, really. And we talk about the availability of buses and when they come to the end of their service, when a vehicle becomes available. How are we going to make these groups know about this? How are we going to advertise it? These opportunities will be well welcomed by local communities. And I know that from a meeting I was at last night. So how are we going to let them know that this is active and it's something that's going to become available? Thank you.
Yeah, so I will hand to David Stokel because it will be through the community team that will do it. But if PCAVs have already been in touch asking, can we make it available through their channels? Because this came out of the Anti-Poverty Task Force, who asked and said that transport, it could be used for taking people from one community down to shopping at, where there's budget shopping facilities, little Aldi's or anything else, and I'm sure there are budget retailers available. But that's where it came from. So it'll be through the Anti-Poverty Task Force. It's people working together from Lethem for All, providing driving, training, etc., for free to other community groups. So it's a coordinated network that the word will be spread through that. But I'll hand over to David, who will maybe be able to give further examples of how the information will be spread.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. Yeah, thanks for the question. So in terms of promoting the opportunity to groups, we've got a number of networks where we can share this with. We have the Stronger Communities networks, which are in every locality and are well attended by community groups, which include development trusts. I think development trust might be one of the groups who have a particular interest in this. Youth groups would be another area where I think there would be interest, and there's the Youth Work Partnership, which services for young people support. We would cover sports groups through LAL. LAL will be able to promote the opportunities, and just through our other community councils as well, networks. So I'm confident that we could get this opportunity out across multiple groups and be able to gauge that interest.
Thanks, David. And of course, there's 40 of us as well, or 38 at the moment. There will be 40 that can spread it as well. So there are other options. Thanks for the question. Councillor Rep.
Thanks, Vice Convener. It's just a really quick question about practicalities. If it's in the report, I apologise. I have community groups that are already asking me, so I'm wondering about the timescale. How soon will community groups be able to apply, please?
I think the applications can come in after we've made the decision, but there's 14 minibuses going to be coming available depending on condition between now and the end of the financial year. And this is a high number because in years moving forward, there may be only 1, 2, nothing, but there's 14 coming up. I'm waiting to be chastised again if I'm wrong, but I think that's the number, and I think the applications can start coming in, and between, I think there's three just now, but they have to be brought up to standard. So anytime I think the applications can start coming in.
Fantastic, thank you.
Deputy Provost Parrott.
Thank you very much. I welcome the scheme generally, although in my past life I had bad experiences of getting rid of second-hand vehicles to the local community, but hopefully we can do better here. Whilst I welcome the idea of, in principle, spending up to £5,000 per vehicle to make it fit for future use, I hope that where a vehicle really is beyond economic repair, we're prepared to be brave enough to say so and say, look, this vehicle just isn't worth repairing. You'll end up with too many bills downstream. Thanks.
Yeah, and that'll be up to the professionalism of our fleet maintenance team, and we'll have to trust their opinion, but it is giving some scope for repairs or making, if you have to swap an engine from one vehicle to another, and you instead of having 2 vehicles that aren't suitable, you get one out of it. But it'll be down to them to decide. And possibly trying to get rid of tanks, etc., to your previous employment might have been the difficulty of trying to pass them on to second-hand vehicles.
If I may, 24 years ago in Dunfermline, I'm sure there was a lady there who thought that my TA Army regiment existed solely for giving her second-hand Land Rovers. Thanks.
Thanks. Councillor Illingworth.
How do we make sure that the organisations we give these buses to are resilient enough? Because you can give an organisation an asset and then you find they all fall out and, you know, within a matter of weeks or months. How do we make sure that the organisation is resilient?
I think you'll find that in the application form. There are these questions about finance and how they can ongoing, and have they a driver and have they got someplace to keep it. So I think that's all you can really do is judge it when the applications come in. Thanks. Councillor Collins Stewart.
Thanks, Vice Convener. It was to follow up on Deputy Provost Parrott's question about where something genuinely is beyond economical repair. I mean, I understand that we have to trust the professionalism of our officers, but I think we should also be able to trust our communities in that if they want to take something on and repair it, and maybe they have the skills and experience to be able to do that at far less cost than it would cost the council through that £5,000 budget, that we should be bold enough to accept their challenge and their request and transfer them. Is that the intention of the?
I would like to think, because the 5,000 isn't per vehicle, it's £50,000. I would hope there's vehicles that need nothing spent on them to go through, and another one might need 6,000. So it's all, I would rather they were all in good condition before they're passed on. If they're, it would be a judgment call, but if it's going to be more than 5,000 or 6,000 to repair, I don't know if many community groups would want to take it on. But I don't see why it can be ruled out. Again, it'll have to be a discussion with the officers.
No, my point was that 5,000 or 6,000 would be an enormous difficulty for a community group to raise, but they might have either the skills within their own group to do it, or they might be able to access support in kind. So maybe they can get a local garage to do it for them, who wouldn't do it for the council, for example. Something like that.
That again, I would leave it down to that'd have to be in discussion. But I hope you're not volunteering for me to go back into my past role and roll about underneath minibuses. That day's long gone. But it's worth taking up, Colin, and we'll discuss it. Okay. Councillor Dry.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I appreciate that the scoring matrix is prefaced by the comments that it's not a final decision-making tool, and I understand that. But if it's a free-for-all in terms of people applying now, if the committee approves today, if it's a free-for-all and there is a large number of applications, as we hope there may be, is there any form of pass mark here, or is it just in order to compare one application with another, relatively speaking, or is there like a 25-point pass mark or what?
I think it'll be down to availability and suitability, and it'll be down again to officers. Pass over to Nigel or to Pat about what they think in that situation there will be.
Yeah, thanks for the question. This would be the first time that we would have used this scoring matrix for any kind of vehicle transaction. So that the truth of the matter is that we're not entirely sure how it's going to work. But I would imagine that we would apply as professional a judgment as we could on each of the categories that are stated in the matrix, and the organisation with the highest mark would be awarded the minibus, if indeed awarded is the appropriate term.
Thanks for that. Councillor McEwen, sorry I missed you at the point of clarity.
I think it's mainly on the back of what Councillor Stewart was discussing. The thought I had while he was questioning and getting his answer was that we may have sort of mental health community groups out there that would like to take a minibus and actually fix it themselves as part of the process for their mental health charity. So that the actual doing the work on the vehicle is something that people can get involved as a well-being activity. And it just as an example that I thought of during that questioning.
I'll pass that to Nigel. I've more than thoughts.
Okay, thanks for that. And I appreciate the spirit with which that proposal has been voiced by Councillor Stewart and Councillor McEwen. I think we would have a worry in terms of transferring a minibus which was either not fit for purpose or not fit for the road, and the possible reputational kickback that we might get. But it's something that quite honestly we hadn't considered. We'd put all our thoughts into creating a process that handed over, that transferred to a community group a minibus which was fit for the road, that had an MOT, was in decent condition, and trying to contribute to the kind of transport solution for as many different groups as possible. So maybe that concept is something that's worthy of further discussion.
I think that's fair, and that is the drive behind it, is to hand over roadworthy vehicles. And I was only smiling because you look at modern minibuses, and I wouldn't be tackling them because the number of specialist tools you need to work on anything, and when you get into emissions and that, it's not like when we had distributor caps and spark plugs and things like that to work on. So thanks. I don't see any other questions, so I will move on quickly to. I think that was David from earlier, but David, have you got another answer to come in?
Just a very quick one, because I know we're short on time. I think, it's the first time we've done this. I think we'll be looking to be quite pragmatic, and I think as we get a number of applications coming in, we'll be able to assess what the level is. But we'll be seeking to work with groups in localities and assess each application on its merits. It's not just going to be on the scoring matrix. There is a bit of negotiation as well, because some groups may be able to bring in additional funding or training on that, and we'd obviously want to make sure that there was a spread of these buses across Perth and Kinross, not that all 14 went in one area, because they happen to have a lot of groups who could put good applications in. So, as Nigel says, we'll pilot this and arrive at good solutions for groups.
Thanks, David. So I'll move the paper. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Taggart, Mr. Taylor and his team for the work they've done on this, starting, as we've said already, from a blank canvas, because we've not done this before. And I think it is quite an innovative way to move forward, to move surplus stock on to where it can be put to better use. So it was agreed at the last meeting of this committee in June that the policy position for the disposal of minibuses at public auction be changed to allow those deemed to be in a suitable condition to be transferred to community groups. This innovative approach will remove a barrier to a number of groups, particularly those in rural areas who may not otherwise have access to their own transport solution, and help mitigate some of the issues being experienced in our communities around transport, poverty and social connectivity. The allocation of up to £50,000 from the Anti-Poverty Measures Fund and earmarked reserves will provide necessary funding for any required repair to minibuses for MOT purposes, or to bring them up to better condition before transfer to community groups. This aligns with the core objectives of that fund. The initiative will be trialled on the number of minibuses due to reach the end of their operational life within council service during the 24-25 financial year, and feedback will be sought from community groups to assess the reliability of vehicles and capture the wider impacts and outcomes of the initiative. this initiative has been brought to us by the idea of it was formed at the Anti-Poverty Commission workshops, and it has been welcomed by many of the members there as one way to tackle poverty within Perth and Kinross. So I'm pleased that we've come up with this new way of disposal, and I'm happy to move the paper with the recommendations set out in the report. Seconder, please.
Just to add, I totally support this report. It's a measure, it's an innovative measure. It's going to be a benefit to a whole range of people within Perth and Kinross, especially I think in rural areas and smaller communities. And so I'm more than happy to second the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. Councillor Barrett, comment.
Thanks. I think firstly, support the paper and certainly the principle of providing serviceable vehicles to community groups. You know, as you said, the idea originated from community groups who felt that they were buying ex-council minibuses which had been sold at auction and were having to pay through the nose for those vehicles. So by cutting out the middleman, we're going to be generating community benefits. I do think that we are, falling into the trap of designing a policy by committee, and I hope that the officers are not risk averse when it comes to implementing this policy, but certainly risk aware. If there's 14 vehicles coming to the end of their useful lives, then I want to see a big proportion of those vehicles reach the community groups. And whether some of the comments that other members have made about what a condition that they're supplied in and what MOT life they have can be considered in achieving that end, I think would be useful. I think we do have to be flexible over the 3 to 6 month period that we're running the trial. I do think that we're in danger of gold plating the exercise, and I don't want to see the council's mechanics team spending inordinate amounts of time bringing minibuses up to MOT standards when they should be working on the fleet of vehicles that the council needs to support its operations. So there's an element of suck it and see. I think if members are given a clear signal that we want to see these minibuses in the hands of community groups making useful use of them, and that's what is translated and implemented, then that would be a good thing. But if we can find out that community groups are perfectly happy to take the vehicle as seen with 6 months MOT, then we don't need to be spending, a week given an extra 6 months MOT. So.
Thanks for that, Councillor Barrett. Provost McDade.
Thanks, Mr. Leader. I think it's a really positive policy, and I think it will reflect really well on the council within our communities. I think for what is a very small sum of money in the grand scheme of things could have transformational impacts within the communities that will receive the opportunity to get one of these vehicles. The ability for them also not to be wasting their precious resources trying to buy up vehicles at market rate allows them to really reinvest those precious resources within the community. I think this is a really good model for how, as a council, we should be approaching other things. And I think all credit to yourself for leading and driving this policy forward. I know that from past experience, Spitalfield is the place that you're supposed to go to get welding done. So I'm sure there'll be lots of minibuses parked up there shortly for your overtime free of charge. But it is a really good policy. I think something that we should be using as a model for how we can look at the benefits the council can offer to our communities for relatively low cost using our rather large estate and assets. So very much support the paper and credit to yourself for leading this.
Thank you on that. My welding days are done, so I don't have to declare an interest in this at all. But thanks for your comments. Councillor Colin Stewart.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Just to echo what the Provost just said, thanks to you for bringing it forward. Certainly in terms of the disposal of minibuses and whatever else may follow, I think this is a really good direction of travel. Thanks to the officers for the opportunity to input and for the changes that they've made following the Strategic Investment Advisory Group meeting at the start of the month. I know not everything that I would have liked to have seen in there is in there, but certainly I think it serves our communities better following the discussion that we had. In a shocking turn of events, however, I would like to completely agree with Councillor Barrett that, yeah, he's as shocked as I am.
It's like a Liberal Democrat then.
No, thank you.
Absolutely.
I do think that we have to, as I was suggesting in my questioning, I do think we have to be bold and to trust communities, and as a council not to be risk averse at the cost of the potential benefit that there is to communities out there if they can do something for better value than the council can. So certainly I wouldn't like to see this be a be all and end all and a restriction, but rather an exploration of the way to open up this. Otherwise I'm supportive of certainly the principle of the policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other comments, so I'm happy to move the paper. Can we agree it? Thank you.
Okay, we move to the last item on the agenda, and I detect a degree of consensus developing on this committee, but hey, the last item is purely for noting. Kirsten, as Clark sent an email yesterday, and this is more technical changes. You can see the track changes, and it has been agreed by the JCC members. Yep. So can we just note the report? Yep. Right. That's all for today and until November. And obviously on the agenda then, you know, health and social care partnerships are going to be a really important item. But thank you very much. And we're just a tad after 5.